Hi, greetings! It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is the 11th video for the Human Resource series of videos here on YouTube. And this particular video is on a human resource topic that's sometimes not so pleasant, but it is something that every organization really must consider because it really is about being able to keep a healthy workplace. And the video is on separating and retaining employees. And so we're going to talk about some key ideas related to separating and retaining employees, including distinguishing between involuntary and voluntary turnover, and recognizing what the effects are in an organization, how employees determine whether the organization treats them fairly, identifying legal requirements for employee discipline, summarizing ways in which organizations can discipline employees fairly, explain how job dissatisfaction affects employee behavior, and how organizations contribute to employees' job satisfaction and retain key employees. So there's a lot of important topics that you should consider as we develop your knowledge and skills in the realm of human resources. You know, organizations truly need to manage high-performing and low-performing employees properly. They have to retain employees, which helps retain customers and increases sales ultimately. In organizations with low turnover and satisfied employees tend to perform better. So really, if you want to maintain a profitable organization and a competitive organization, you have to consider these things related to turnover. Let's talk about involuntary versus voluntary turnover. So involuntary turnover is turnover initiated by an employer, and it often with employees who would prefer to stay. Voluntary turnover is turnover initiated by employees, and often when the organization would prefer to keep them. So just to help distinguish that. There are costs associated with turnover that need to be considered. Involuntary turnover, recruiting, selecting, and training replacements. It's the same for voluntary turnover. Involuntary turnover, lost productivity, lawsuits, and workplace violence. With voluntary turnover, you're just considering lost productivity and loss of talented employees. And you always have to consider when someone leaves, they probably have friends that are there or other onlookers that are there, and so that might affect employee morale too, right? So employment at will doctrine. If the organization and employee do not have a specific employee contract, the employer or employee may end the employment relationship at any time. And there are also implied contracts. And discharge cannot violate a law or public policy. So that's at will, the at will doctrine. So employee separation, organizations must develop a standardized, systematic approach to discipline and discharge. It should not be left solely at the discretion of individual managers or supervisors. It should be based on principles of justice and law and should allow for various ways to intervene. Employee separation, you really have to consider fairness. You have to consider interactional justice, and you have to consider procedural justice. So outcome fairness is really related to a judgment that the consequences given to the employee, make sure that they're just. Interactional justice is a judgment that the organization carried out its actions in a way that took the employee's feelings into account. And then procedural justice is a judgment that fair methods were used to determine the consequences that an employee receives. So you always have to think about big picture things when you're terminating an employee or an employee leaves an organization. You have to consider legal requirements. Wrongful discharge is a discharge that may not violate an implied agreement like an employer had promised job security or action inconsistent with company rules. Discharge may not violate public policy, like terminating an employee for refusing to do something illegal or unsafe. Discrimination. Employers must make discipline decisions without regard to a person's age, sex, race, or other protected statuses, and they must be even-handed, carefully documenting discipline. This can avoid such claims against discrimination. Employee privacy. Information gathered and used for discipline, and it must be relevant. Privacy issues concerning employers' wish to search or monitor employees, and employers must be prudent in deciding who will see the information. Measures for protecting employees' privacy should be concerned. You have to ensure that information is relevant. You must publicize information, gathering policies and consequences. Request consent before gathering information, treat employees consistently, conduct searches discreetly, and share information with only those people who need it. Notification for layoffs. Some organizations really do a pretty good job at this, and they have plans for broad-scale layoffs. They may be subject to Workers Adjustment Retraining and Notification Act, and this is the WARN. And employers require to give notice before closing or doing layoff. Progressive discipline is something that we always have to consider, and there's the hot stove rule, and this is a principle of discipline that says discipline should not be like a hot stove, giving clear warning and following up with consistent, objective, and immediate consequences. Progressive discipline is a formal discipline that takes place in a process in which consequences become more serious if employees repeat the same offense. So progressive discipline responses should look something like this. Unofficial spoken warning. Official written warning. Second written warning plus threat of temporary suspension. Temporary suspension plus written notice that this is the last chance to improve, and then termination. So by doing this, it really protects the organization, and it gives the employees an opportunity to get better. Employee separation. There are rules of behavior that should cover disciplinary problems. They should be very specific regarding tardiness, absenteeism, unsafe work practices, poor quantity or quality of work, sexual harassment, impaired by alcohol or drugs, theft of company property, cyber slacking. You have some options for dispute resolution that should be considered: an open door policy, peer review, mediation, and then arbitration. So some alternative dispute resolutions, including open door policy. This is making managers available to hear complaints. Peer reviews. This is a process for resolving disputes, taking them to a panel composed of representatives from the organization at the same level as the people in the dispute. Mediation is a non-binding process in which a neutral party from outside of the organization hears the case and tries to help people in conflict settle an agreement. And then there's arbitration, which is a binding process in which a professional arbitrator from an outside organization, usually a judge or a lawyer, hears a case and resolves it by making a decision. So EAP, or employee assistance programs, often come into play, and this is a referral service that employees can use to seek professional treatment for emotional problems or substance abuse. And many EAPs are fully integrated into employers' overall health benefit plans. Outplacement counseling is a service in which professionals try to help dismissed employees manage the transition from one job to another. And the goals are to help former employees address psychological issues associated with losing a job, grief, depression, and fear, while helping them find a new job. Employee engagement is something that we talk about all the time. And employee engagement really is the degree to which employees are fully involved in their work and the strength of their commitment to their job in the company. Employees who are fully engaged and provide a clear competitive advantage to that firm, including higher productivity, better customer service, and lower turnover. So having a focus on employee engagement is important. We have to consider job withdrawal, and job withdrawal is a set of behaviors in which employees try to avoid the work situation physically, mentally, or emotionally. This usually results when circumstances such as the nature of the job, supervisors, co-workers, pay levels, or the employee's own disposition cause the employee to become dissatisfied with the job. There's warning signs, right? So in the job withdrawal process, you have to take a look at the different relationships of those personal dispositions, tasks and roles, supervisors, co-workers, pay and benefits, and look for behavior changes. Look for physical job withdrawal. Maybe they're calling in sick. Maybe they're just not as productive. But it's really important to consider. With personal dispositions, negative affectivity, core self-evaluations, task roles, role ambiguity, conflict and overload. Supervisors and co-workers, there may be negative behavior by managers, conflicts between employees, and pay and benefits. Pay is an indicator of status, and pay benefits help enhance self-worth. You have to always consider each of these different things in order to keep and understand why employees do what they do, if anything. Sometimes people change their behaviors because they become whistleblowers, or they're aware of whistleblowing that's taking place in the organization, or lawsuits. You may see physical job withdrawal and psychological withdrawal, which really is a decrease in job involvement and decrease in organizational commitment in the least. Job satisfaction is so important these days when organizations are trying to maintain talent and levels of productivity, and if people are not satisfied, they'll probably have one foot out the door, which is going to cost all the investment that you've put into that employee. You want to keep employees satisfied. So job satisfaction really can come from a lot of different sources, but it really is related to values. And so personal values, perceptions, and ideas of what is important should be considered. Personal dispositions is all about negative affectivity and negative core self-evaluation, which are associated with job dissatisfaction. A positive attitude often raises overall levels of employee satisfaction. So smart managers or smart human resource professionals are always finding ways to help managers keep their employees happy and satisfied with their job, right? So monitoring job satisfaction truly is a key job for managers at every level. And when you're hiring employees, you need to hire people who have the right predisposition of being satisfied. Be aware of their capability of becoming depressed. You need to make sure that you're designing complex and meaningful jobs and establishing clear goals and appropriate roles, reinforcing shared values, encouraging social support, and helping employees pursue those goals, then setting satisfactory pay levels, making sure that you're communicating a clear pay structure, and the policies related to pay are so important. So I want to share with you the basic steps in role analysis. First of all, members of a role set and write expectations for the roles. Then members of the role set and discuss those expectations. A preliminary list of roles, duties, and behaviors are considered, and role occupant lists expectations for others in the role set are met by discussing the expectations and reaching a consensus, and then modifying that list of roles, duties, and behaviors. So job complexity, meaningful work, clear appropriate roles are really important. Formally identifying expectations associated with each role. This is why having very clear job descriptions are so important. Supervisors and co-workers, they both can affect employees' job satisfaction. A person may be satisfied with them for a number of reasons, and it could be shared same values, attitudes, and philosophies. There could be enough social support and people who are sympathetic and caring in the environment, and help is available to help people attain certain valued outcomes. Pay and benefit, organizations always need to be comparing themselves with their competitors. How can you make sure that you are paying people what they're truly worth in each of their individual jobs? So human resource professionals really should be always constantly monitoring pay levels in the industry and the trades that they're employing people in. Pay satisfaction influences job satisfaction. Satisfaction with pay and structure and proper pay raises help lower employee dissatisfaction levels and help lower the costs associated with replacing employees, right? So there are lots of different things that can happen with job satisfaction, and monitoring job satisfaction should always take place. Employers should be aware of satisfaction levels so that they can make the necessary changes before it's too late. There's usual ways to measure job satisfaction, like using a survey. A systematic ongoing program of employee surveys should be a part of every organization's HR strategy to monitor trends and prevent voluntary turnover. And exit interviews. When people leave the organization, find out why they're leaving. And so that really is important. Bottom line, body language, nonverbal language truly can help you be able to identify people who are unhappy, dissatisfied, and may have one foot out the door in the organization and taking their talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities with them. And that means you will take probably about 2 more years to fully replace someone who's been with your organization for a while and doing excellent work. It usually is a lot cheaper for an organization to find out what makes an employee happy and help keep them there by giving them things constantly that help them feel challenged and supported and a valuable member of a productive community. That's my video on human resources separating and retaining employees. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation and there's been something in here that you can use today to help you create a career that you truly love. And more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.